that plays the Oompa Loompa. He plays like all of the Oompa Loompas.
That was one guy?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Deep Roy is his name.
Deep Roy?
Yeah. So
Deep Roy sounds like a it sounds like a classified like military thing.
It sounds like somebody who would be in adult entertainment.
Yeah. But like still a little person.
Anyway, so he's been in like a lot. He was in the Never Ending Story. He was in the original Star Wars films or whatever when they needed Yoda to like actually get up and walk. He was the person they put in the costume to get up and walk, and he played one of the Ewoks.
Oh, so he wasn't a puppet the entire time?
I don't think so. I don't think they he wasn't.
The first film that Yoda was ever in, he was definitely a puppet.
Yeah.
And he was definitely like, I don't know, marionetted. He was puppeted.
No, you can go online and like find it. Like they have pictures of that Deep Roy guy or whatever, like standing there, and they're like putting the costume on him.
Really?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Because I wasn't aware that was even the case.
Well, I know that there was a guy inside of the R2-D2.
Yeah.
Yeah. And apparently, the Chewbacca costume had like air conditioning.
I would imagine. I would hope so.
You know what I mean? Well, yeah. I mean, they're gonna we're gonna go out in the middle of the Serengeti desert to film this scene, and you gotta wear your hair costume.
Yeah.
Like we're gonna have to shoot in like 3-minute intervals.
Put on your hair suit. Time to go.
You know, I like to look at when you have an actor who's in a costume or some kind of prosthetic that's like, because practical effects go a lot further than digital effects do, but even now. So I always find it interesting to see like how much time they had to spend like in the makeup chair to, get their whole get up on, and I think Jim Carrey. This might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure Jim Carrey. When he played the Grinch, it took them 12 hours to get all that shit on him.
I don't know if it was 12, but I remember it being like a long time. And
I'm pretty sure it was 12.
He talked about how torturous it was. Like that was like the worst part of like filming that entire movie.
Yeah, I could imagine. I mean, and because like they had to like build the face up right with like I guess plaster or something, and then he had to put on them like yellow contacts and.
Ugh.
I mean, you do that, you sit there through all that, and now you got to go shoot your scenes.
Yeah.
So, but I imagine it's like...
And he's probably got like 12 hours worth of scenes to do.
Yeah. I mean, they would probably get better at it as the filming goes on.
Yeah.
And they shave like maybe an hour or so off. But still, like, so much of your life is putting on and then taking that shit off.
The worst part about it is like... I'm sure like it probably wouldn't be like the first like quarter of it was probably like, oh my god, I'm gonna have to do this for like X amount of days or whatever. Then like the middle of it, I'm sure you kind of like get into like the swing of
like this is just how it is.
Like this is just how it is.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that like towards the end of that third quarter, like it's just fucking miserable.
Yeah.
Because you're like, I'm almost there, but I'm not quite there yet.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure the last day was probably like, oh, thank God this is the last day or whatever.
There was it like wrapped up, and then you like got called in for a reshoot.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, you have like PTSD. I gotta put that fucking thing back on.
But you imagine like you still have like 25 more days to go of this. You're like, oh my God.
A long 25 days. There was I don't know the name of the girl from the first X-Men movies that played Mystique, but I know that Jennifer Lawrence was Mystique in a few of them.
Was she the one of the New Age ones?
Maybe.
Yeah, I think that's right.
But they had to paint that person's whole body blue and then put that red wig on them and then put scales all over them.
Scaly stuff and everything.
Yeah. I feel like the biggest trick would be, especially considering like the Grinch, is like continuity. Like you got to make him look exactly the way he did on all the other scenes.
Yeah, I'd be horrible at that.
Yeah, like he looks different every time. Like in this one shot, he's got like alopecia. He's like they forgot to put the hair on him, and nobody caught it.
Yeah, I wonder what like their QA process is for that. Like, I'm sure they probably have like a quality assurance team that goes through and checks all that stuff.
I'm sure they do. Yeah, I'm not good with monotony. So I feel like just having to sit there in a chair while people glued shit on me all day long, that would drive me insane. I know that the guy who played Gimli, John Rhys Davies, I think his name is, he was actually allergic to the glue that they were putting on his face for that beard. And like every time that they did it, he would get like these horrible rashes just all over his face. And so they would try and shoot as much as they could with him. You know, when he was
trying to minimize the amount of time that he has to spend, but that's across 3 movies.
Yeah. They filmed all those in one go, though, didn't they? From what I've heard that before. I don't know if that's true, but I've heard that they filmed everything while they were there. Well, and it kind of makes sense.
Boy, that's having some faith in the in the material.
But I mean, it kind of makes sense to do it that way because, like we said, think about the logistics of moving all those people out to New Zealand and.
Boy, could you imagine being like the project manager for that, like trying to keep track of like, okay, well, this scene is for this movie, and
then like you got, you know, because they used every time, you know, we talked about before, every time they had a big shot showing like all the works and everything, like all that was real people, standing down there with costumes and.
Well, that's what makes that movie so timeless, or those movies so timeless.
Yeah,
there's a couple of like some outdated scenes or whatever.
Yeah,
like there's one where Saruman. Where they're like felling the trees into like the trenches or whatever, and you can obviously tell it's like a miniature set and everything. But really, other than that, I mean, it's pretty. All of the scenes are, I mean, they're very well thought out and very well constructed and shot and everything. Yeah,
there's a lot of really good shot composition in those movies. There's one scene towards the end of the third movie where I think Sam. He gets knocked out or something, and he wakes up and he goes to run into Mount Doom, and he's running towards Mount Doom, and the camera's panning away from him and kind of going up at the same time, so it's showing like the Eye of Sauron in the background, but he's, you know, it's all green screen, and they did a good job. Kind of getting like the perspective right of him running towards the
gates.
The gate, well, not the gates. The little like opening in the side of the volcano that he runs into.
Oh yeah.
And if you watch really closely, like the last like 2 seconds of that shot, he's not tracked right. No. And it's very obvious. It's just like somebody running against a green screen. Yeah. Because he's not really going anywhere.
Yeah. He's like running in place.
Yeah. And like the amount of distance that his feet are covering is not the same distance that he's traveling.
Yeah.
So I think it was like they probably could have done better with that shot, but I mean they're right here at the end of the movie.
Yeah, they're like, let's just get this
editing.
done. Yeah.
Like, just get this over with. I'm sick of this shit.
And the crazy thing, I think I remember about those movies too, was when they went to like the VMAs and like everything and like all the different awards, they swept everything. They just took all of it. Yeah,
I mean. I'll find myself just like occasionally be like, I want to rewatch that trilogy.
Yeah,
because it's such an accomplishment. I'm like, even taking away like all the writing and the storytelling, just like the shot composition and the editing and the music and the acting and everything was just all the choreography was just fantastic. There's really no scene in those movies that fall flat, even if you watch it with like all the. Like the director's cut, like with the extended scenes and the deleted scenes. Some of that stuff you can be like, okay, I see why they cut that out. That kind of breaks up the flow of the movie. But even still, it's really incredible.
Well, and you can always tell too, like when somebody, and I think we've talked about this before, when you can tell when somebody's like doing a movie or they're doing a TV show or something, people who actually appreciate the source material, and they like kind of treat it with respect and everything, which I think you can obviously tell that in those movies.
Oh yeah,
because
there's Tolkien, a lot of reverence. It takes itself very seriously.
Yeah. Or it's like you like choose something like the new Halo series.
Yeah.
Where it's like, ugh.
Yeah.
It's like the first 3 episodes in, he removes his fucking helmet.
No, the first episode.
Oh, the first episode.
He
I haven't
takes
watched
his
any
helmet
of
off.
it, so this is all just hearsay for me. But
And he says, "Bruh." He doesn't. I'm just fucking with you. He might. I haven't seen all
he's
the
like doing
episodes.
TikTok dances.
He's flossing. He like sticks a dude across the map with a sticky grenade. He's like, "Poggers."
And you know the thing about it is like they totally missed the marker. They missed the time frame on when even that should have even been released. Like they would have been better served releasing that right after 3 came out.
Oh yeah, they could have done a lot after 3 came out. That was when the Halo hype was at its peak. Was when Halo 3 released. I mean, they could have done movies and TVs, and they could have done all kinds of shit. But I kind of respect that they didn't.
Yeah.
You know, they just kind of let it be what it was.
Yeah.
And they didn't cloud it with a bunch of other shit. But yeah, as a Halo fan, it's just been L after L for the past 15 years. We need a win. It's like Halo Infinite, you know, kind of fell out of everybody's good graces because just the multiplayer was such a shit show. Not from a stability standpoint, like it works fine. It's just like there was like no content when they officially released the multiplayer.
You think it's just because they concentrated too much on the storytelling and the?
Well, I mean, I would imagine they have separate teams for that stuff, but like, you know, it's.
But at the same time, it comes down to like where do the executives want to kind of spend their time at?
Yeah, it's, you know. You would think that with the way that modern gaming is now, because they focus a lot on multiplayer, because that's where all the people. That's where you're going to have most of the people together. They're going to be in multiplayer.
Yeah, well, it seems like that's where a lot of people. I guess a lot of people like want theirs to be like an e-sport deal or whatever.
Well, that too. Yeah.
Which I'm too old to understand any of that.
Well, like everybody wants to be the next Fortnite.
Yeah.
Because Fortnite had. You know, they had those tournaments, and like the grand prize was $30 million.
Yeah.
If they're giving the person who won,
that's so insane.
If they're giving the person who won $30 million, how much do you think they made off of all that?
That's so insane to me.
Yeah. But the thing about Halo Infinite was, okay, it's like if you compare Halo Infinite's multiplayer release to Halo 3's multiplayer release, and the amount of shit that released with Halo 3 in a finished state. You know, you had King of the Hill, you had Team Deathmatch, you had Oddball, you had Forge and Theater Mode, and you had there's plenty to do.
Yeah.
When Halo Infinite's multiplayer released, you had like quick play and custom games, and quick play you ran through like the same 4 game modes. So if you were somebody who didn't like to play objective-based modes, too fucking bad, sometimes you were going to play that.
Yeah.
So if all you want to do is Team Deathmatch, what people would do is like, okay, that wasn't Team Deathmatch. They would just dashboard on the Xbox and then reload Halo Infinite until they got the mode that they wanted.
Yeah.
Well, then the people who were already queued up in that lobby, all of a sudden you're in a lobby with, you know, one other dude on your team against a full team because everybody else quit. It was just I don't know. And I don't understand. I don't make video games, so I don't know what all it takes to put a game mode into a game. But you could go into custom games. There's a tool already built into it to make your own game mode.
Well, not only that, but they've done it in the past.
Yeah, so I don't understand what the issue was. Why wasn't that in there? The only thing
it's not like this is a new idea.
Yeah. The only thing that makes sense to me is that they arbitrarily withheld like content.
Yeah.
Because they want it to be. They said this is the Halo for the next 10 years. Because they want it to be like this.
Oh, so they want to do like GTA.
Yeah. They want it to be this live service, like episodic, updated thing.
Yeah, so they want it to be like software as a service. Then.
Yeah, so I think that what they did was they withheld a lot of content.
Yeah, your fan base can tell that, though.
Yeah, they're like throwing bread to ducks, you know what I mean? It's like little bits at a time. But the thing is, you know, take me for example. I was like, okay, there's nothing to do here. I don't want to play this.
Yeah.
So I moved on to other things. Other things have my attention. So when they're like, hey, we released this for Halo Infinite, I'm like, I don't really want to play Halo Infinite.
No.
I didn't have fun doing that, so I'm not going to go do that again.
Well, also, not only that, but you also haven't put yourself in my good graces.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like I said, I think I made it about 40 minutes into Halo Infinite's campaign, and it's boring.
Oh.
It's so much of Halo's success is the story writing and the characters and the dialogue and
the composition.
Yeah.
Most of it's the composition.
Yeah, a lot of it, yeah, for sure. Halo Infinite, graphical fidelity, it looks great. I like the character design. I like the art style. I like, for the most part, I like the characters. They did Master Chief really well. Especially considering where they left him after 4 and 5. But the thing is, it's boring because it's all the same. It's an open world game, so it falls into that issue that all open world games have, where after a while it's like, okay, this is just, I'm doing the same shit I was doing over here. I'm just over here now.
No.
That's the only thing that changed. There's like all these little like side things, like climb the tower and like reveal the map.
No.
Like, well, that was fun the one time I did it. Now you're telling me I have to do it in like 14 other places. Like, it just gets boring after a while. I think they would have been much better served to do like a linear,
just leave it on rails
story.
And be done with it.
Yeah. But
it's easier to tell the story that way.
Yeah, I think so too. Because when you give...
Like, it takes a very specific kind of game with a very specific kind of lore in order to tell the story in that manner.
Yeah.
And Halo is not that game.
No. Especially because if you have an open world game, the story can't be about this thing that's time sensitive. Because if it's up to the player, they're going to spend a lot of time dicking around.
Yeah.
And that doesn't fit in with the story. There's actually a word for that. It's called ludonarrative dissonance. And the way it works is like, say like during gameplay, right? You get shot. You can get shot a bunch, and you don't die. But then in a cutscene, you get shot once, and the main character's like, oh, I've been shot. Oh, he falls over. Like, okay, well, that's not how that worked when I was playing the game, but in the cutscene, that's how that works. So it's kind of the same way with the story.
Looking at you, Reach.
Yeah. So she got fucking one-shotted.
With a fucking needler.
Yeah, a needle rifle. It's like you have to shoot somebody 20 times with to kill them in the game. But, yeah, so like, I'm trying to think of, there's a good example. Oh, so, I tell you who did it well was Mass Effect. I don't know if you've ever played any of the Mass Effect games.
You can look back further than that. You can look back at Majora's Mask.
Yeah, well, there is a very real consequence for dicking around in that game. But was it 3 days? You had 3 days. And, the whole time that you're playing, regardless of what's happening, there's a counter at the bottom of the screen counting down those 3 days. And when it runs out, the moon with an angry face crashes into the earth and blows it up, and it's genuinely terrifying.
No.
So when you see it the first time, you're like, I don't ever want to see that again.
That game gave me so much anxiety as a child that I turned it off and never played it again.
I love that game.
Like, my anxiety was just through the roof the entire time I was playing it, and I think I had, like, 1 day left. I was like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't made the progress I was supposed to be making.
That game is a lot of fun, though, when you start figuring out, like, people's schedules and things. And it was really creative how they did that, too, because I guess it was Nintendo told the development team was like, look, we need to make another Zelda game, a brand new Zelda game. And Ocarina of Time just came out. So they had this whole new engine with all these assets and all this stuff, and it was like, you've got 6 months to make this new game. So they're like, okay, well, we're just going to use everything we used to make Ocarina of Time and make a new game based off of that. So it was really clever how the 3-day restriction was like part of that. They didn't have much time to work with anything. But what they had and what they did, I feel like they made a good game out of it. But when it comes to like, dicking around in the open world really affecting, like, the story, Mass Effect does a good job of that. I recently played through that trilogy a while back, and there's a part in Mass Effect 2 where your ship gets boarded by these, like, the main bad guy aliens or whatever, and they abduct your crew. You, the main character, and all your squad mates are just so happen to be away from, it's, a bit of a contrivance.
No.
But you happen to be away from the ship when this happens. Well, then you come back and you find out that everybody's been abducted. So there are still things that you have to go and do before you do like this big final assault on the aliens. But if you go right away, as soon as they've been abducted and you go right away and you go rescue them, you can save everybody.
Yeah.
But if you dick around and you do like 6 or 7 more missions and do all this stuff and you spend all this time doing other things, when you go, you watch them all die because you didn't go and get them. So there's like a consequence to
your actions.
To your actions, if you're not playing the story.
Well, the interesting thing too about that trilogy is that unlike a lot of different trilogies is like your decisions also carried over into the next game.
Yeah.
Which I thought was if you want to play the game as if you were reading the story and you are controlling the main character of that story, then that's the best way to do it.
Yeah. A lot of people will poo-poo on Mass Effect 3 just because of the ending was really bad.
Yeah.
And it's a fucking sour ending. It's not a good ending.
Yeah.
Because so the whole point of Mass Effect is there's these like sentient machines.
They come from
they come from outside the galaxy. They live in like the dark space outside the galaxy. And every 50,000 years, which I always thought was a weird thing. Like you have all these different alien species that kind of cohabitate, and it's like they all agree what a year is.
Yeah.
And it's an Earth year. That's strange. Anyway, so every 50,000 years, the Reapers come and they kill all the spacefaring civilizations, and they leave the younger civilizations behind.
Yeah.
So then 50,000 years, they can come and get them, and it's like a cycle. So the whole point is, you're trying to stop the Reapers.
Yeah.
And they've been doing this for countless millennia, and it's like it's this big thing. Like, how are we going to do this? And so you go through all these things, and at the end of the Mass Effect 3, you have 3 choices that you can make. You can kill yourself in order to kill all the Reapers, but it doesn't just kill the Reapers; it kills the other sentient machines, like that are on your team and like are like good people. And so it's like there's a sacrifice there. And then there's synergy, which is where you mesh the consciousness of all the living beings with all the sentient machines, and it's like that's really weird. I don't want to do that. Or you can try and control the Reapers, which the main bad guy of the game has been pushing for the entire time.
Yeah.
He's like, we need to control the Reapers, and the entire time, your guy's like, no, I'm not doing that. And then you get to the very end, he's like, well, maybe. And there's technically a 4th ending where you don't do anything and just let them win.
Yeah.
So nobody was happy with any of those 3
Well, it just
options.
doesn't seem very fleshed out.
No.
Well, and I think, too, where a lot of studios get it wrong is that I don't think that they treat their stories as if it were a novel.
Yeah.
Which you would think that...
You got to have the ending in mind.
Yeah, you would think that, like, you write the ending first.
Yeah.
And then you structure the entire story around it.
You know where you want to get.
Yeah.
Now you can worry about how you get there.
Yeah.
Rather than, here's where we started, where the fuck are we going, and how do we get there?
Yeah. It's like... Because the way I've always heard is you write the ending first.
Yeah.
And then you write the beginning. And then... So now you have your premise... And you have your ending, and now you can figure out the rest of the shit in the middle.
Yeah. You can go as crazy as you want to, as long as everything gets to this point.
Yeah.
From this point to the other. Mass Effect also did especially a lot of modern games will do what there's probably a word for it, but I call it rain taking. When the game takes control away from you to make sure that you see this cinematic thing that happens, right? So like if you're playing as a character and say you open a door and you walk outside, you're in control. You did all that. All of a sudden, like the camera pans away and like it does this automatic thing and it shows the dude fall off a cliff.
Yeah.
I was like, to me, I feel like it would make the world in the game feel more fleshed out and real if I happened to see that myself.
Yeah.
Because the other players could just walk straight through the door and keep going and never see that happen.
No.
But if the camera's like, oh, look at this thing that's happening. And it's like, well, that doesn't really...
Yeah, it's not like
it doesn't convey the same emotion. It's like, I saw that happen rather than that was shown to me.
No.
Mass Effect has a lot of moments in, especially Mass Effect 3, because that's when shit really hits the fan. Like, up until that game, everybody you're trying to convince to help you doesn't even believe the Reapers are real.
No.
And now they're here, and it's like, oh... So at the end of Mass Effect 3, there's this big push to like, there's like a like a teleporter or whatever. It'll get you to like the main spaceship that'll help you destroy the Reapers. And there's like 4 Reapers standing around it, and they're shooting lasers and killing everybody. And it's like just one final charge, like hurrah! He like
huzzah!
Everybody runs down the hill to go to the teleporter.
Yeah.
Any other game would have made that a cutscene, but you actually do it. You actually have to run down there, and the fact that you do it yourself makes that so much bigger.
Well, you're not breaking the immersion.
Yeah, you're not breaking the immersion. It's like I'm doing this final charge rather than I'm watching the final charge happen.
Yeah.
Call of Duty's real bad about that nowadays, where they'll
and that's such a shame too.
Yeah.
Because I remember like the old school Call of Duty, like the Call of Duty 2 and stuff like that, where it's like do you think that is like a product of just the environment that they're in currently, like where it's like they feel like they have to put these cutscenes in? Because I feel like back in the day it was more about the gameplay and the storytelling, not so much about like, oh, look at the new graphics engine that we're using. I feel like that's a lot of what that is now. Yeah,
they're wanting to show off.
Yeah.
And they'll do like these they'll do these cutscenes, like these little mini cutscenes that like are like perfectly graphically optimized, and they want to make sure you see this.
Yeah.
Where in the old game it was like, in the old, especially consider like way back in like World at War, which is a fantastic Call of Duty. There were so many things that happened just kind of naturally that might happen to you, but not happen to me, just depending on how you're playing in that specific point. But I think now why they do it is it might be a lot of that showing off like the tech, but I also feel like modern game devs don't trust players as far as like their ability to actually play their game.
Yeah.
And that's really, I feel like that happens a lot too with like this unnatural dialogue where other characters in the game are telling you how to like use items.
No.
Or they'll be like, remember, press the A button to jump.
Yeah, like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, you're like 50 hours into the game. It's like, yeah, I know I had to jump to get up here for you to tell me that. Yeah. So, I don't know.
Well, also, too, it's like, if you're trying not to break the immersion, like, why would you tell the player, just like, don't forget to press the start menu.
Yeah.
And it's like, if I'm acting as if I am the player, it's like, what are you talking about?
What the hell are you talking about?
The start menu.
Yeah. Imagine like you walked up to some dude in the street in real life and he's like, remember to roll out of the way when you see danger.
It's like, what are you...
You think, oh, that's just a crazy old person.
It's like a bus comes by.
Yeah. It's like a quick time event in real life. You're like, whoa! You have to press B. If you don't, you just get smacked by the bus. A lot of games nowadays too, there's no consequence to like for failing.
No.
You know what I mean? Like they're really like,
as opposed to like the old school like Mario games or Sonic games where it's like, hey buddy, you got 3 lives.
Yeah. You gotta get through this whole game.
Yeah.
On 3
3 lives.
And if you die 3 times, you go back to the beginning.
Too bad.
That could have been like an issue with like memory, like storage.
Oh yeah.
You know? So, but like, yeah, games nowadays will quick save like every 2 seconds.
Yeah.
So like you die and then you respawn right where you died. It's like, well, then what was the point of dying anyway? If I'm just going to be right here when I come back, just I might as well be invincible.
Yeah.
That's why I like Elden Ring, because there's a big consequence to dying in Elden Ring, because you have to, you collect, they're called runes. You collect runes when you kill something, and you get enough runes you can level up, but you get 1 point to put into like 8 different stats.
Yeah.
So you really got to, where am I putting this 1 point?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, I want to use this weapon eventually, so I'm going to level up until I can get a hold of that. Well, if you die, you lose all your runes, but you have a chance to go and get them. But if you die before you get them, they're gone forever. So if you're at a point where you need like 80,000 runes to level up, that's a lot of runes.
Yeah.
That's not chump change. And it's like, okay, I just need 2,000 more runes and I can level up. And especially if you get locked into a boss battle that's like particularly difficult and he's killing you every time you go in there.
No.
And you go into the boss room, the first thing you do is you go and you grab those runes before you even worry about him.
Yeah.
So it's that.
You're just like running for your life the whole time.
Yeah. It's like there's got to be a consequence to failure,
No. Well, it's more indicative of what real life is. Like, people want to play the games for the fantasy aspect of it.
Right.
However, there needs to be like a sprinkling
Of
some real life consequences of what's actually going on here.
Well, it gives it depth, you know.
Yeah.
It gives everything meaning. If what you're doing is, you're just steamrolling everything, then...
Well, there's no fun.
That's not fun. I mean, it might be fun for some people, but, I mean, I don't, It's like if you ever played a game and then you put cheats on.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's not fun anymore. It's fun for like 2 seconds, and you're like, oh, well, it's not fun being a god amongst men,
It's also the same.
Consequence.
It's also the same problem that a lot of people have. Well, it's the same problem I have with like Superman.
Yeah.
Like I can't identify with
this omnipotent being. Yeah, there's no there's this really contrived green rock that you can just pull out whenever you need Superman to fail.
Yeah.
For the story.
Yeah, it's just like I'm super good and I'm also invincible.
Yeah. It's like we said before, Superman's written better to be a villain.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Super strong, powerful, but he's got the one weakness.
Yeah.
That's like a villain thing.
Yeah.
My only weakness. That's not like a superhero thing. Superheroes usually have several weaknesses that they have to fight
And wasn't it they
through.
came up with that weakness like later on in the story?
I don't know. Superman's been around since the fucking 50s. I know that the first iteration of Superman, he couldn't fly. He could only jump. Really high, yeah. And he also had the ability to have whatever powers he wanted.
Oh.
Yeah. So,
was he written by a 12-year-old?
Yeah. My power is to have all the powers. Yeah, I'm pretty sure his debut was in Action Comics #1 or something like that.
No.
It's that, that classic picture of him holding up that VW bug or whatever.
Oh,
he's
yeah.
like a man in a suit,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he can turn into an amphibious creature at some point in that thing. He's like, I'll become a lizard man.
It's like those Animorph books. It kind of gives credence to the whole lizard people thing, doesn't it?
A little bit, yeah. Well, let's bring in the podcast here. You want to do it? Me do it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello and welcome to the Thicc Bois podcast. This is episode 27. And I know what you're thinking. 2 releases back to back.
Oh,
yes. You've been a good boy. Do you want to go ahead and dive into Super Cringe Thursday? This one was particularly rough. I don't want to make fun of this guy because he was going through it.
Well, I don't particularly want to make fun of him too bad because he was filmed without his consent.
Yes.
So, unlike some of the other ones that we've done,
that filmed themselves
and put it out there.
Yeah.
However, with that being said,
it's so unfortunate. Here's the thing. Let's look at this as a whole.
Well, first of all, let's explain what the video is for those that haven't seen it.
For those that haven't seen it, Super Cringe Thursday, our Friday pick for Super Cringe Thursday.
Pause this episode.
Yeah, go to the Facebook page and watch it. It's I would play a clip, but you kind of need the subtitles on. I don't think the audio would really help much. But the thing is, it's this guy and this girl, and they're down in the street, like on the sidewalk, and they're being filmed up from like an apartment window or something. And the guy is having an emotional breakdown, like an actual breakdown. Yeah. He's just like, the way he's speaking is pure stream of consciousness. His feelings are just coming out of his mouth, and he's crying to this girl. From what I gather, about she recently got a boyfriend, and it wasn't him, and maybe they were best friends.
No.
And he's saying, you're always going to choose him. It'll never be me. I'm never good enough. There's going to come a point where he's not going to let us hang out, and you're going to have to choose him or me, and you're going to choose him. They always do, and he's just, it's coming out of him.
No.
And when he's done, I say when he's done, he reaches a point where he just can't say anything anymore, and he just goes, ah! And he putters away on a scooter.
On a Vespa.
Just out into traffic at 5 miles an hour. And when I'm watching it, I really feel for him, because I've been there emotionally. I feel like we all have, but it wasn't recorded.
Yeah.
and put on the internet, for the rest of forever.
The thing is, too, is that there's no way that person filming it just happened to be at the window with their phone out and at the ready.
That had been going on for a while.
That had to have been going on for a minute.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so, too. I think they had probably been standing there screaming at her. I felt bad for her being subjected to it. I mean, he's sitting there on a scooter, and he's got like this like ladybug helmet.
Oh God!
And then he screams and he pulls off into the road there. It was funny you said it would be funnier if it was like in the middle of the day with like traffic, so he had to like wait to like to like get out in the roads.
Which, I mean, let's be honest. We all know exactly what happened there is that old boy got put in the friend zone because he wouldn't make his move.
Yep.
And then he got pissed off about it because
Chad, Giga Chad Megacock came along and swept her off her feet.
Exactly. Like, dude,
women love a confident man.
You know,
it just is what it is, man.
Take your L.
Yep.
And move on.
She's not the only girl.
Obviously,
in the world.
Judging from just the conversation that was had, he said you always do this, or they always do this. I can't remember exactly.
He said it's never me. I'm never good enough. And he said it always happens this way.
Yeah,
something like that. So maybe this isn't the first time he's been through this.
Yeah,
or he's seen this play out before.
No,
I guess amongst his friends, or maybe even in media or something. I don't know.
Or maybe it's been him. It keeps happening to him.
Yeah.
It's like, maybe you should rethink or retool your way that you try to get the ladies.
There's a common denominator here, right? It's it can't be every girl.
No.
It's always you. You are right about that. It does always happen. Here's the thing. You have got to look at why it's happening. You have got to say, why is what I'm doing not working? Why do girls not like it when I pull up on my scooter and I scream at them in this very emotional state with my little red round helmet? There's a reason that girls don't like that. So, you've got, like you said, he needs a mentor. Yeah,
that young man needs a mentor.
Yeah. And I don't know when this was recorded. He's probably moved on. He might be better at it. But for anybody else who's been in that, who's going to be in that situation,
he's obviously a young man.
He's obviously a very young man. And the thing is, I've been there. From a very young age, I was interested in girls. I didn't know why. I knew something was there.
No.
I didn't know what it was, but I liked girls a lot. And I've struggled with, well, why don't they like me? What am I doing wrong here?
No.
And eventually it gets to a point where you're like, oh, okay. Really, what it is you just kind of have to be yourself.
Yeah.
You quit trying to be
somebody or something that you're not.
Quit trying to be what you think a girl wants you to be.
No.
If you're just yourself and you're confident, and confident isn't arrogance.
No.
Confidence is just like putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
And if they don't like it, oh well. You just kind of you have to move on. It's like every time you get rejected, that's not the end of the world.
No.
I think girls outnumber us men like 3-1. Isn't there like? It might be
like one. It's like 1.7 or something like that. There's more women than there are men.
There's more women than that girl who didn't like you.
Yeah. And also, it's not fair to her.
It's also not fair to her. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's not obligated to like you.
No.
She doesn't. Yeah.
That would be coercion.
Yeah. Women aren't this vending machine.
Yeah.
Where you put in all your nice bucks, and then you get a cookie.
Yeah.
They're people, and they don't have to like you.
No.
And they're not all gonna like you. There's not one person in the world that everyone likes. So, like I said, you're the common denominator here. You've got to figure out what it is that you're doing that isn't working.
Well, especially too, like as a young man growing up. I didn't really have to go through. It looked like he might have been like maybe in his early 20s, maybe.
Yeah.
So me and Allison have been together since we were 18. So I didn't really go through like that phase of like trying to get with the ladies.
Trying to swoon.
Yeah, trying to swoon the ladies or anything. So I married my high school sweetheart.
Yeah.
So my story is a bit different. However, I think a lot of what it is too with like young men is that what your perceived value is, you cannot reach it at this particular moment in time.
Yeah.
Because a lot of what a lot of women probably want is they want somebody that's going to be able to protect them and provide for them. That's a lot of what it is, right? Yeah. I mean, there's other things, of course.
I don't think that's an outrageous thing for women to want.
No.
I don't think so.
I don't think so at all. I mean, it's different for everybody. It's different for everybody, right?
I think if a woman is wanting you to be like this jet setter that like takes her to Dubai every weekend, it's like, okay, well, you need to go find that guy because I'm not it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'll never be
that. Well, too, and like I said, this especially in, you might not ever be somebody that has a high six-figure job. That might not be ever who you are.
Yeah.
However, you have to figure out who you are and the things that you're looking for.
Yeah.
Before you need to be happy with who you are as a person before you try to find somebody else.
Exactly.
Because if you're trying to find self-validation in other people, then you're looking at it the wrong way.
Because you'll never get to be yourself, and it will always be work. You'll never have a moment where you can let your guard down and be yourself. You can be, so if you put on this facade and you act in a way that you think this person likes, and let's just say it works, and they think that's who you are, now you have the girl, okay? Well, now what? You've got to put up this act and this facade for the entirety of that relationship. And here's the thing, people can smell bullshit, and eventually they're going to figure out that that's not who you are, and they're going to leave, or they're going to try and change you. It's not going to be a good, easy thing.
No.
It's like, I think that a lot of the reason why me and Mary get along so well is just because we are who we are. I am who I am, she is who she is, and we just mesh. It works.
Yeah.
I didn't, have to put on and act a certain way for her. She just liked me as I was. Now, there have been a lot of girls and a lot of women who did not like me as I was. And you know what? That's fine.
Yeah.
That's okay.
I don't have to be liked by everybody.
Yeah, I don't have to be liked by everybody.
And that seems to be a real big problem with today's society is like a lot of people are looking for everyone to like them. Yeah. And guess it's impossible. You can't do it. It's not something, I would say try to do your best not to go out of your way to piss people off constantly.
Yeah, don't be a dickhead.
Yeah, don't be a dickhead. However, it's like you don't have to go around and try to make everyone like you.
Yeah.
And especially, too, I think as you get, well, for myself, speaking personally, as I get older, I seem to care less and less about that.
Yeah.
It's like I said, I'm not going out of my way to be an asshole.
Right.
But I'm just going to be the person that I want to be.
Yeah.
And if you don't like it or it makes you mad, it's like I'm not trying to be an asshole to you, and I'm not trying to negatively impact you personally.
At this point, it's your problem.
At this point, it's your problem.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Exactly.
I think that, there's a lot of pressure put on men to, and I know that women have the same thing too, and I'm not trying to, compare the length of our chains here, but there's a lot of pressure put on men to be, this idea of what a man is. And I feel like if you ask 20 different men what a man is, you get 40 different answers. Because nobody really has it nailed down. Media will tell you that a man is like this, big, strong, rugged, he can fix a car. And,
you're like the brawny man.
Yeah, the brawny man. And feminists will tell you that all men are dogs, pieces of shit, you're garbage.
Yeah,
You suck.
hashtag kill all men.
Yeah, you suck for even existing.
Yeah.
So...
Well, I think you should specify. You mean fourth wave feminism?
Yeah, fourth wave feminism.
Yeah, fourth wave feminism.
When feminism really came around, it was about women.
Yeah, if you're talking about like second wave feminism, where it's like we should all be treated equal.
Yeah.
Under the eyes of
the law.
The law.
Yeah. Which is that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Feminism now is not about equality for women; it's about hatred of men. But yeah, you're never going to become, anybody else's idea of what you're supposed to be. You just have to be who you are.
Yeah.
And you know what's wrong with you. It's just a matter of if you really want to take inventory of that and say, I need to work to fix this. Because that's a hard thing to do. It's hard to accept that there's something wrong with you. That kid screaming at that girl, you know, I don't want to speak for him, but it comes across as he doesn't understand that it's an issue with him.
Yeah.
It's not an issue with her. He does say, it's not me, I'm never good enough. Well,
then you need to take some self-inventory.
Take some self-inventory here. If we're looking at the situation from that apartment window, it's clear to see why it is never you.
Yeah.
Because if that's how you're acting to all the girls,
yeah, imagine
that kind of makes sense.
It's like Jesus.
Yeah. Whoa. I would say step one is get rid of the scooter.
Yeah.
You know?
Even if that means that you have to take public transportation.
Yeah. Lots of people ride the bus.
Yeah.
It's
like, plus guess what? You know, you do some more walking, you get in better shape.
Exactly.
So
it would, you know, it might have hit a little better if you were on like a bike and you down the road. But even then, your little emotional spiel wouldn't have been that good.
Well, and you know, it's like we said, it's important for, I think, both of the sexes to just be the person that you don't. And I'm not saying, be the person that you are.
Yeah.
It's like, because chances are, or not chances are, but sometimes the person that you are
is a piece of shit.
Yeah. And you,
if you're very selfish and like, you know.
Yeah. I'm not saying like everybody should be like, everybody has to accept me as I am. It's like, you should have an idea of kind of who you want to become.
Yeah.
And then try to do your best to work towards that endeavor.
And just because if you have this idealistic version of yourself, just because you're not that doesn't mean you failed.
Yeah.
A lot of people feel like they failed before they even started.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not just, you know, becoming, you know, a certain way. It could be anything. Like I want to complete this goal. And they'll do like this big, grand, huge goal, like this huge thing that's going to take a lot of time and effort. And they're going to be like, well, that's too big of a goal. I failed.
Yeah. Well, you should set smaller goals within that goal so that you can reach those goals, right?
Little stepping stones. And that was a hard thing for me to realize too. Was, you know, I would have like, everybody's done that thing where you're laying in bed at 11 p.m. and you're thinking about, here's how I want to turn my whole life around.
No. Like, I've got the keys now, baby.
I figured it out. Then you wake up the next morning and you're the exact same person that you were yesterday.
Well, I think it's important, too. A lot of people have this idea of it's like, well, once I reach this goal, then I've reached the end point. It's like, yeah, well, now you have to live the rest of your life.
Yeah.
It's like, so the way that I try to look at it now is like I just get up and I do this now because that's just what I do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, you try to, like, the way I see it is like at the end of my life,
yeah,
it's like, who's the person that I want people to remember?
Yeah.
Right? So, like, how do I get to that point?
And understand that not every person in the world is going to be at your funeral.
Exactly.
And is going to shed a tear.
And it's like, you know, and you have to, life isn't like this big grand, like I did this one thing and now it defines the person that I am. Yeah. It's these small things that you do every single day that seems mundane, but over an extended period make a huge impact.
Yeah. You know, a lot of people are nihilists these days. You know, there's this, you know, especially when you start considering like the grand scale of the universe and like, you know, the heat death of the universe, eventually there will be nothing. Nothing will have ever mattered. And that's true. That is a fact. But what good does that knowledge do you?
Well, not only that, but how does that help your current situation? How does that help the people around you? Especially, too, it's like, I find it very difficult to look at somebody and say, there's nobody in your life that you love at all.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have a grandparent or a friend. Like, And I'm not talking about like a romantic love interest.
Yeah.
I'm just talking about somebody that you care deeply for.
Well, the thing is, just because you didn't change the world doesn't mean that you failed. It doesn't mean that you don't matter.
And guess what? There's people that change the world for the worst.
Yeah, more
Look
of those.
at Mao Zedong.
Yeah, probably.
And Joseph Stalin.
There's probably more of those
and
than there
Adolf
are the others.
Hitler.
The thing is, yes, it's true that nothing that you do will really affect the world 50,000 years from now. 20,000 years, 1,000 years from now.
No, 100 years from now.
The nation of the United States has only been around for 200 years.
No.
Less from give or take, something like that. So the thing is, while it is true that what you do won't, in the end, won't matter, it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to matter on this grand, cosmic, universal scale.
No.
It doesn't have to. It has to matter to you in this small time frame that you have. This is your one life. This is all you get. You can affect, and it will matter to the people around you. It'll matter to you. And it's like, that's where your effort has to go.
No.
And just because, you have this huge, grand, giant idea of what you want to be or what you want the world to be, and you never get there, it doesn't mean that you failed. It just didn't happen. And there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
But if all you ever do is kind of wallow in your self-pity,
Yeah.
like, oh, I suck, I'm the worst, the girls don't like me, and I can't change the world, then,
Like, yeah.
oh, yeah, that's right.
You're right.
That's correct.
You're right.
Now, what do you want to do about it?
Yeah.
Do you want to stay there on the ground and wallow in your own self-pity, or do you want to make this time that you have left matter to you?
Well,
and be worth living.
Yeah, what was it? Was it Henry Ford? He was like, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you are correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that too, and like you think, do you think that a lot of like the nihilism is kind of based around the fact that there seems to be like I guess, was it Nietzsche was like called it the death of God?
I think so.
Yeah. So it's like a
lot of people will quote Nietzsche when they're trying to defend nihilism, but Nietzsche himself at the end was like, nihilism is this useless knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in that too, like the way that the kind of my conclusion that I don't want to call it a conclusion because it might change in the future or whatever, but
yeah.
Sort of my line of thinking at this moment is that is like if you give in completely to nihilism, is like you're not serving any good for anything.
Yeah.
Right? Because you've essentially like the way that like the structure of like, I don't want to say like, I guess you could call it religion. I guess like faith would be like a better idea.
Yeah.
Of like a higher power or whatever. Yeah. Right? It's like, but
people like to give purpose to.
Yeah. So like. And that's a very abstract thought of like what God is, because some people are like, oh, he's like this old man in the sky or whatever. Yeah. And I don't think that's a proper interpretation of like what that.
They just needed a way to depict.
Yeah,
him.
They needed a way to depict him. That way you can like abstract from that.
Yeah.
That way people can kind of get like an idea.
Yeah.
But if you want to break it down to like God is like the ultimate good, you know what I mean? Regardless of like all this other stuff around it.
Yeah.
But that kind of gives you something to like point at and kind of like orient yourself. Whereas like when you take that away, then there's nothing there.
Yeah.
Right. But it doesn't mean that there's
direction.
Yeah. It doesn't mean that there's nothing there, and now you kind of get to direct yourself in any way you choose.
Yeah.
But once you remove that, that becomes a vacuum.
Yeah.
Right. So then it just sucks everything in.
Yeah.
So now you have like all this different shit that gets sucked in there, and I think you can see that a lot too. Like when you look at like the Nazis, and like you look at like was it the Red October with the bourgeoisie and like the the USSR takeover of Russia and everything,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Is like you remove what God was, and instead you put in place of it the state.
Yeah.
Right? So when you put in place of it the state, essentially what you're admitting is that we do not believe in a higher power of good, so the state is going to be the higher power of good.
Yeah.
Which, that sounds like an awful idea.
Yeah. Every time that's been implemented,
Yeah.
it has been an awful idea.
Yeah, an awful idea. It just seems to me like when you kind of remove that aspect, whatever your thought process,
What your thought process is, yeah.
yeah, whatever your thought process is of what God is, like in
And you're saying God as just in like this grand idea,
this grand
this
idea,
like general
right?
purpose of,
Yeah,
of
correct.
life.
Yes. Mostly, and growing up Southern Baptist, I'd really struggled with, especially too once I kind of got to where I was like a teenager.
Yeah.
Like I would say, like I think a lot of teenagers are pretty nihilistic.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I think everybody kind of goes through that phase, right? But
Well, a lot of the world that's been as it's the kind of
There's,
facade,
like-
the facade of life starts coming down. in
yeah,
your
like this
teenage
like
years.
materialistic like
Yeah,
nihilism or
yeah.
whatever, right? But going through life like that, and it's hard to sort of explain. It's like the way that I tell people is like I'm not religious, as like, but I have faith in something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
When I think of religion, it's kind of like the rules that other people have put in place. Like this,
It's like dogma,
yeah,
right?
this is the way that you have to believe in God.
Yeah,
This is the way you have to be, a Christian.
yeah,
So I consider myself a non-denominational Christian. Like my belief in Christianity is the sacrifice and resurrection of Jesus Christ. It is the ultimate sacrifice to absolve you of your sins, and you have to accept Him in order to,
yeah.
not just live in oblivion for all of eternity.
Yeah,
But even just beyond the consequence of death, it's just a matter of how you live your life here while you're
correct. Because you can create your own little personal hell here on
here.
Earth.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't think that other people who have never met God and shook His hand can say, "Hey, He told me this is how you have to do it. Now, by
No.
the way, give me 10% of your income."
Yeah,
So religion is like kind of like the pomp and circumstance put in place by other humans, and I think that a lot of that is bullcrap. I think that there's when you break it down to what's in the Bible, that's where your Christianity is.
yeah.
Be kind to your neighbor and don't kill and don't be envious and
Correct. Yeah.
we're all equal under the eyes of God. And
Well, not
everything
only
like
that, but if you're only looking at it, if you only look at it from like a literal standpoint of like oh, there was Jesus, He did exist, He did die on the cross for all of our sins. It's like,
Yeah.
well, really, what does that mean in the
Yeah.
in the vast concept of what we call existence,
Yeah.
right, and what we call consciousness? Because everybody's trying to figure this out,
Yeah.
right? So for me,
for myself.
yeah, for myself,
I figured it out for myself.
so the way that I'd sort of look at it, and everybody's entitled to their own opinions or whatever. Honestly, at this point, I don't care.
Yeah.
But the way that I see it is that when you talk about like Jesus dying on the cross and everything, for now that this is going in a religious direction.
Yeah.
So the way that I see it is that. Especially like in the Old Testament, it's like you had like all these people that had all these rules that they had to follow.
Yeah.
Right? Like you had like all these commandments and everything, and the sacrificing of animals and like
Yeah.
all this stuff.
You couldn't wear mixed fabric. You couldn't eat shellfish. You couldn't get tattoos.
Yeah, you couldn't eat pork and there's all these different, and
Yeah.
it was only for a specific person. It wasn't for what they called the Gentiles.
Yeah.
It was only for the Jewish people,
Yeah.
right? Like it was specifically for them.
Yeah. And a lot of it kind of makes sense when you look at like the time period where those people lived. Like getting a tattoo now is probably a lot different than how they did it back then.
Yeah.
Eating a shellfish now, where it's farmed and raised and deveined and cleaned and shipped
Yeah.
and everything like that. If you lived back then and you grabbed a bug out of the river and ate it, what do you think would happen to you?
Yeah, exactly.
You'd get sick and fucking die.
Exactly. And they say the same thing with pork. Like you're not supposed to eat pork. It's like, yeah, well, if you undercook pork, you can get worms and it'll kill
Yeah,
you.
and look how a pig lives.
Right.
It wallows in its own filth. I mean,
And so the way that
it gets explained in the Old Testament is like you have all these rules, all these commandments that you're supposed to follow, and I think it's important if you want to dive deeper into that stuff. It's important to understand like the history of it and everything, especially like if you are somebody that's, I don't want to say like a practicing Christian or whatever, but if you kind of believe along those same lines to sort of understand the history of where that faith came from. Right. So, but when Jesus shows up, essentially it allows you a different path in order for like, I don't want to say like enlightenment because that's not the right word.
The thing is that because we live in sin, we can't. It's like we can't live with the Father. We can't be by God's side because we are sinful creatures. So,
right, so
the whole point of the sacrificing everything was to absolve you of your sins. That was how they did it back then. So the thing about Jesus' sacrifice has meaning because it was the ultimate sacrifice. He was like, you can never, as you are, never be by the Father. It's like, I will accept basically all the blame and the consequence for your sin, all the sin that has happened and will ever happen. That was the point of the sacrifice.
So like you have what we call essentially God, which is the ultimate good, right? What we try to orient ourselves towards. So, but that's, like I said, that's a very abstract concept, a very abstract idea of sort of what that is. So when you look at it from like the New Testament standpoint, like you have somebody that's sent in the flesh, which is Jesus, which would be of God. He is God, right? So that's sort of like a weird thing that they've done there, right? So like of course, Jesus comes and he dies for our sins and everything. But it's easier for us to orient ourselves towards that because it's like, oh, like there was somebody here and essentially he was perfect, right? So, but one of my main takeaways from him dying on the cross for our sins is like, hey, you're never going to be perfect. You are locked into this biology that you have and you can't do it. But that's okay. Because that's not the point. The point is that you try to get up and you try to make the right decision, and you're not always going to. But that doesn't give you a pass to be a shitty person. Right? So you should still try to be a good person. You should still try. And I think where a lot of like, I don't want to say I think where a lot of Christianity gets it wrong because I don't fucking know. I don't have all the answers. But a lot of like a lot of churches and stuff is like, oh, you say this prayer with me and now you're saved. I think it's much more than that. I think it's I think it's important that you do that because you say to yourself, it's like, I'm now trying to become a better version of myself, right? It's like, but now you kind of have to continue to walk that path.
It's not just a button that you press. And all of a sudden you're okay. It's, if you make a genuine, effort. And, you're going to fail and you're going to fall off the path. And the thing is, though, you're okay. Because everybody does. No one's perfect. The only person who was ever perfect came down here and died a horrible death. Because
you want that?
So, and it's very easy to, like, we've said before, it's very easy to be hand wavy of Christianity. If you're looking at it face value, like, all those people believe there's a man and that lives in the clouds and that Jesus was this blonde-haired, blue-eyed white man in the Middle East, and it's like you said, when you're looking at just the depictions of these things, like that's just artistic depiction. That's just how we can, how we can relate to ourselves.
Well, and it's like that too. And you think about way back in the day, like all like the different, like these people didn't they thought the world was flat. Well, there's people now that think the world is flat.
Some people thought the world was on the back of a giant turtle.
Exactly. So like you look at like that kind of stuff and it's like, you probably don't want to give these people like this abstract idea of what God is. It's like, and this might actually be incorrect, but if I'm not mistaken, I think that maybe it's like in Revelations or whatever, which that's kind of a strange book.
That book's wild.
That's a wild book.
That's the one about the Armageddon and Apollyon. And,
so there's like, I'm pretty certain that there's a part in there where it kind of explains like like an angel, like what it looks like, and it's like this wheel with all these faces on it, and the wheel's on fire, and like
it's like interlocking gold wheels with eyes covered in eyeballs, and it's like it's wreathed in fire.
Yeah,
it's like that's what an angel is.
Yeah, it's like
That's why they always said, "Be not afraid."
Yeah.
Because imagine, it was like when Jesus was born, an angel appeared to the shepherd boy and told him to go to Bethlehem. So imagine this kid.
Yeah.
He's just out poking sheep with a stick, and all of a sudden this thing just like appears in the sky. And it said, "Be not afraid."
It's like a heart attack.
Screaming the entire time it's speaking to him. Yeah, so it was it's easier to bring people on board if you depict an angel as just this like cherub with wings, and it's like, oh, that's nice to look at.
Yeah, as opposed to that,
this eldritch horror, this unknowable thing.
Well, that too, and like you have to imagine, like we kind of base what we know upon like kind of what we've seen and like normalize like our surroundings, right?
Well, yeah.
Right, so like if you were to see, like it would be different. Like if you're like, oh, that's Mike, and like you see it all the time, right? But then, like if that's not something that you ever see,
something that's totally brand new,
that pops up,
and it's speaking to you, you're not just immediately, let me hear what this thing has to say. You're just gonna,
I'm gonna try to get the fuck away from it.
Your brain's gonna turn into mush.
But yeah, Revelations is a fucking just weird. It's a weird book.
There's a lot of weird stuff in the Bible, and a lot of like stuff in the Bible. Yeah. Like who was it that was? I can't remember the name of him, but it was the guy that was like traveling to a town, and there was a group of 40 children that were making fun of him for being bald.
Oh yeah, and he sent a she-bear.
Yeah, he called down the wrath of God, and a bear came out of the woods and mauled the children.
Yeah,
and you're like, okay, I haven't really read like the lead up and the end of that story. But if you take that's an odd. If you take that piece out, that at face value is a really weird thing.
Yeah. Like you got that mad because they called you bald.
Yeah. And then you look at like like Moses leading the Jews out of Egypt, right? And the plagues that he set on Pharaoh. And it was like, God told Moses, like, here's how this is going to go down. He said, you're going to go and tell Pharaoh to release the Jews. And if he doesn't, I'm going to set these plagues upon him. And then eventually the last one will be, I'll kill all the firstborn sons. Mm-hmm. He's like, but if you don't want your son to die, you put lamb's blood over your door. And that's why Jews celebrate Passover. That's the spirit passed over them.
I learned that from Rugrats when I was little.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. There was a lot of Judaism in Rugrats. Holy shit. Wow. But he also said, I will harden Pharaoh's heart so that he will not let the Jews leave. And you're like, okay, well then...
Yeah, then what's the whole point of this?
What's all this about? Yeah. Like, it's like if you're going to make it so that he can't stop himself, why are we punishing him for that? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, there's some weird stuff in the Bible. And a
lot of it's probably just stories too.
Yeah, and that's what
to be analogous to things that you face in your
life. So one of the things that I've been doing a little bit of studying is that they think that Genesis was written around 3000 BC, which is around the same time as like you had like the old gods with like Zeus and...
That's only 5,000 years ago.
Yeah. So you're looking at... And they... Essentially, Genesis was written as like an answer to... Like
a lot of questions. A lot of
questions,
from?
right?
Yeah.
So like if you're looking like old Greek gods, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, what did they do? They fucked with people, and it was essentially murder and mayhem all the time.
Yeah.
Where like...
Zeus was a piece of shit.
Yeah, exactly. So, but like if you look at... Just speaking directly from Genesis, like if you look at like how the world was created when you talk about in Genesis, is that God created the world with his word, right? Yeah. And like there's a repeating idea in Genesis where it's like, and then in the end he said it was good.
Yeah.
Where the only time in Genesis where that isn't repeated is when he separated the heavens from the earth.
Yeah.
Because that was the only day in which nothing was created.
Yeah.
Right. So from what I've gathered, or what I think I understand what they're trying to say, or what was conveyed then, because I think what Genesis is it's trying to tell you, like, it's trying to kind of orient everything and be like that way we can get this story up and running, right?
Yeah.
So, like, if you look at that and, like, you look at some of the Abrahamic stories and everything, like with Isaac and Esau and everything, is that a lot of that, I think, was probably like an oral tradition that was passed down.
Yeah.
And there might have been people that at one point were Abraham and Isaac and all these other historical figures, like Ishmael, which was Abraham's other son, is considered to be the father of Islam.
That's why they're called Abrahamic religions.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, if you look in Genesis, like, you have, like, the Ishmaelites, which that's considered modern-day Muslims, right? Yeah. So, like, I'm sure that at some point, like, these people, they did exist, right?
Yeah.
It's like, but since it is an oral tradition, like, you can't write it down as these stories are being told. And in oral traditions, there's really one person that understands the oral tradition, and they retell the stories. And then they have somebody else that comes up, and they tell all the stories to this person. Now, this person knows all the stories, right? It's like a big game of telephone.
Exactly,
right?
Yeah. It's going to change, especially over the course of 5,000 years.
Exactly. And you probably got this old fart sitting there.
Some old senile man.
Yeah. And he was like, back in my day.
It's just like got like no color in his eyes. Like, God created the earth in one day. And it was the same guy who was like, the earth is on the back of a big turtle. Yeah, if you look at it in the context of like the times, right, when those people were alive, well, they were curious about why things are the way they are.
Correct.
Why they want to know, what are those lights in the sky? Why is this big thing? Why is all this dirt and trees here? What's going on?
Correct.
Why are we here? People had questions and they wanted answers. And back then, the easy thing to do, the best they could do, was say, there's this, there's all these people that live up on that mountain way up there, and they're a bunch of dicks. And I was like, we've got to, a lot of the Greek and Roman mythology was like they worshipped the gods so that the gods wouldn't be mad at them. They didn't worship the gods because the gods were benevolent and gave them everything.
Which is really an interesting contrast between like Christianity and like Judaism, as opposed to like some of the older religions, right? Where it's like they were like, it's interesting that they kind of veered in the other direction. They're like no, like God is the ultimate good.
Yeah.
Like, as opposed to like, oh, God's a prick.
Yeah.
And like you have, in order to not receive his wrath.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It was like, God loves you.
Yeah.
And it was like, they kind of made it this thing where it was like, okay, all the shit that's happening to you is kind of your fault. And it was like, you're kind of bringing this on yourself. It's not like divine intervention.
Correct.
Like, your life doesn't suck because Zeus is having a bad day. Your life sucks because you're a bad person and you do bad things.
No.
Yeah.
Which that can kind of devolve into like a lot of like self-flagellation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which it can then resolve into like some pretty deep depression.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But I think too, like when you look at like the New Testament, and that's when Jesus comes in, right? And that's how that kind of gets answered, right? Yeah. It's like, hey, everybody's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
It's like,
you're never going to be perfect.
Yeah, you're never going to be perfect. But that's not the point.
It doesn't mean you shouldn't try.
Exactly.
You shouldn't try to be a good person. Yeah. Yeah, religion, when you look at why religion even exists, it's because people had questions.
Correct.
And it was like, okay, it's easier to tell somebody that big, bright thing up there is a god, rather than that up there is a giant ball of helium gas constantly undergoing fusion and releasing radiation.
No.
They would be like,
What?
But if you tell them, like, that's a big, angry god up there, and don't stand in its presence for too long or you die.
No.
Like, oh, okay, I won't do that then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and I also think that it's interesting that you look at like how, and there's some parallels too when you look at like Christianity and like like Taoism and like a couple of different religions, right? Is like the ones that have stuck around are the ones which you would think that it wouldn't be this way. You would think that the ones that were based on violence and power would be the ones that stick around.
Yeah.
But they aren't.
Yeah.
Those aren't the ones that stick around.
It's not a...
the ones that stick around are the ones that talk about like self-improvement and like trying to be a better person and trying to treat others with respect.
That's more sustainable.
Yeah, correct. Like if you're looking at like the long term it's like that is the better. That's a better path to go down.
Yeah.
Right. But now you have this direct competition with materialistic nihilism, where it's like, well, nothing matters. Mm-hmm. Right. Which, if you're doing that, it's like, well, then that's also too a form of religion.
Yeah.
Right?
That's what you believe.
That's what you believe.
Yeah.
Right. It's technically really all religion is just a belief system.
Yeah.
Right. Because you kind of you can't go through life without a belief system.
Yeah.
You're going to believe something.
Yeah.
Like you can't just be like this anamorphic blob.
Yeah.
Just like going through.
You're just reacting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not how this works.
It's because you are a human being with a consciousness. You're not a dog who just, I'm hungry and I'm going to go eat. I've got a shit, so I'm going to poop. It's like a dog's not thinking, why am I doing this? He's just doing it.
Yeah.
Like you
don't see like the dog have like an existential like breakdown.
Oh my God. That's actually kind of interesting. Like,
which is funny because then that would freak me out.
Yeah, I would pretend that the dog wasn't doing that. Like, I need to surrender my dog. Like, why? Like, he's contemplating. I don't think he should be doing that.
Like, I think he understands what death is.
Yeah. There's a dog called Bunny, and you've probably seen it before, where they have like she's a sheepadoodle, and they have like this big mat of like buttons laid out, and she'll go over and she'll press a button and then another button. She'll say "Mom, love you," and then she'll look at her owner and she'll be like, "I love you too," and then she'll say "Bunny, outside bathroom," and that's how she's letting her know, I need to go to the bathroom. So the thing is, I don't know what the fuck that was. Some kind of bug. Do I think that the dog understands what those words mean? No. I think the dog understands that if I make these sounds in this order, then this happens. Well, that's how dogs learn. They learn through, what's the word? They learn through.
Like the dog understands that, like, if I do this, then this happens.
Yeah. It doesn't understand why that happens. Yeah. It just understands that happens.
The dog's not going to become a poet.
Yeah. So, like, when you teach a dog to shake, dogs are smart and they'll pick up on kind of what it is you want them to do. You can see when they're looking at you, they're looking you in the eye. What is it? What do you want me to do? And it's like, you make him shake, he throws his hand out, and he's like, do this, and he does that, and you go, yeah, woohoo, and you give him a treat. He's like, sweet, awesome. If I do that, then my owner,
I get love.
My owner likes it, and I get food. It doesn't say, I'm shaking. That's what that is. I know that is shaking. It might understand that when it hears the word shake, it's just through association. Dogs learn through association. He's associating that sound and this hand gesture with food and affection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you don't see like a dog like sitting in the sun like thinking.
Yeah.
Like, why are we really here?
Why am I here? Why do I poop?
Yeah. Like, you don't see like the dog comes like, what is life?
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say one of the videos, and like nobody was really talking about it, but it kind of freaked me out.
Yeah.
Bunny walked over to her board of buttons, and she goes, "What is Bunny?" And she looks at her owner, and the owner's like, "I don't know how to answer that."
Dog.
I think she walks over and she presses the buttons for the dog. She was like, "Bunny is dog," and then Bunny was just like, "Outside."
Yeah, like, okay.
Okay. But I don't know. I can't say, was the dog curious, like, of what its existence is?
Well, that too, and it's like if you see, have you ever seen where they'll stick like the mirror, like in the jungle or whatever, and like all the different animals will come up to it?
Yeah.
And it's like you can tell like the animal doesn't understand what that reflection is. It doesn't understand that it's seeing itself.
Yeah.
Right? So
like there's a part where like a jaguar came up and it was like, oh shit, another jaguar. And then there was a part where like a gorilla came up and he's kind of looking at it and he just walks away.
Yeah.
And then there was a part where like an orangutan came by and he was like looking at it and then like he was like touching himself on the head and like touching his face. And he kind of, I think he understood like, oh, that's me. But I don't think he was like, is that me?
No.
Or am I just seeing myself? There's a difference, you know, is this thing me or am I seeing a reflection of myself? So I don't know if like, you know, we've asked the question before, is our consciousness a result of our intelligence? And as everything is evolving and changing, the natural path is to become more intelligent.
No.
So I think that, you know, if dogs are relatively intelligent, but, you know, 50,000 years from now, what will a dog be intelligence-wise?
No.
Is there ever going to be a point where a dog, like, comes online and it starts, like...
That's a horrific idea.
Yeah, because then it's like, okay, it's wrong to own a dog now because a dog... has consciousness.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, okay, well, is it wrong to own a dog anyway? Well, not right now, really, because dogs kind of need people.
No.
You know what I mean? It's like if you leave a dog up to his own devices, especially like a pug can't live in the wild.
No.
So he'll get eaten by a hawk.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I think it's very interesting to consider, you know, when you think about men, humans, you know, Homo sapiens, right? So if you look at like all the way back at like when we lived in caves, there's cave paintings. So that's art that's being created, you know. And if you look at like a cave painting of like a person standing there with a spear, there's like a style to it.
Mm-hmm.
There's like an artistic value. It's not. It's crude, yes, but they use like these geometric shapes and like, you know, it and it's the same here as it is in these caves on the other side of the planet.
Yeah.
They're doing the same thing over there. So even that far back, humans were conscious. Because a dog is not going to make a piece of art.
Yeah.
A dog doesn't, you know, if you give a dog a paintbrush, he's going to lay on the floor and chew on it. He's not going to.
Exactly.
He's not going to paint a picture of like a person. But like humans, several 100,000 years ago, were painting pictures of people and animals and like things like that. Stars up in the sky. They were looking up at that and wondering what that was.
Yeah.
That far back ago. So, I think it's an interesting thought, you know. Will humans survive to a point where we see another species become conscious? We see what we're going through happen to another species.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder, has that happened to us?
Well, not only that, but now you get to a point where it's like, as you're watching the species go through this, it's like, do you have the moral obligation in order to lead them past some of the things or sort of some of the stumbles that we've had as a race?
To kind of guide them?
To sort of guide them.
But can you really guide them without bringing them, you know, along the same path as you?
Exactly.
Or would you be better served to let this, you know, new species of conscious beings kind of figure it out for themselves?
Yeah. Well, not only that, but I don't really think that you could even define consciousness in an animal unless it was able to communicate with you through word.
Yeah.
Through
your language.
Through the spoken word, right? So that's why it's so easy to other people that don't speak your language.
Yeah, yeah.
To look at them as if they're not really human.
They're not really people. Yeah.
They're not really people. It's like because I can't really communicate with them. I mean, you can.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's throughout history. That's how people have committed some major atrocities.
Yeah. You can dehumanize somebody just because you don't understand the noises that are coming.
Exactly.
Out of their head.
That come out of the front of their head.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting thought. Is, you know, if there's another, say, if any animal was going to do it first, it would probably be an ape of some sort, like
some sort of great ape.
Yeah, chimpanzee or something,
or like a bonobo, or
yeah. So if they suddenly became conscious, you know, however many thousands of years that would take, which I don't even think humans are going to be here in another 20.
No,
at the rate we're going. But it would be interesting to see like how how we as a species would handle that. There probably be a lot of people on this side like, yes, we need to guide them and help them, kind of traverse this, what consciousness is. And then there would be another group of people like, no, it's morally incorrect to give them direction.
Yeah.
Like, they need to figure
it out.
out.
Yeah. I guess I'd probably be more on that side. I'd be like, look, you don't need to be fucking with that.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I think so too. It's like, because we still
haven't figured it out.
We still haven't we don't fucking know. Who are we to tell them? Like, let them do their thing,
Yeah.
It's like, just maybe don't kill them all.
Yeah. Like, as long as they're not attacking us.
Yeah. And it's interesting to consider, has that happened to us? Was there a species or something before us that saw humans become conscious, and were they like, uh-oh, like, we need to leave this be. But yeah, you had mentioned for speaking the same language as somebody. So I speak enough Spanish to hold a conversation. I'm definitely not fluent, but in my
I'm assuming that it changes the interaction that you have.
It does. It really does,
right?
Because when I worked over at my previous job, I worked around a lot of Spanish-speaking people, and before they knew that I spoke Spanish, they interacted with me in a certain way. They weren't like mean or anything. That was like very formal and very, there was like niceties.
No.
So it was just enough to get through this interaction and then part ways. But when they realized that I could speak to them in their language, I started to see like who they were.
No.
And, I'm not like, I was like conducting an experiment, and it was just
like some type of like eugenics type.
Yeah. And it was just like
very interesting.
Yeah.
Like a lab coat on.
Yeah.
Like, who the fuck is this guy?
Like taking notes. Yeah. But yeah, you can kind of tell, like, you can start to figure out like people's, kind of preferences and their viewpoints and like how they were and how they interacted with other people. And it's like, when you're just hearing this thing that doesn't sound familiar to you, it's really easy to compartmentalize that in this little space of like, that's just alien to me and it doesn't mean anything to me. But when you're speaking somebody's language and they're speaking it to you, you kind of see them, like, oh shit, like I can be myself and speak to you a certain way. It's like I really wanted to get to a point where I could speak Chinese conversationally. And I speak enough Chinese that I can do things like ask for the bathroom and like ask somebody how their day is going and like what their telephone number is. But beyond that, I got no idea.
Yeah, see, that's what, for some really fucking weird reason, I've always been very intrigued by like Russia.
Yeah.
I don't know what that's all about.
Yeah.
But like,
it's like looking into an alternate universe.
Yeah, it's really odd. It's strange. It's like they look like me, they're white like me, but they're not like me.
They're not like me at all.
Yeah, like they don't have the same alphabet.
Yeah. They use some of the same letters, but they're pronounced differently.
Yeah. So like there for a little bit, it's like I was trying to learn to speak Russian, and that was hard.
Yeah.
Trying to go through like learn like the Cyrillic alphabet.
Well, you have to like unlearn.
And they don't have certain words.
Yeah.
Like that word doesn't exist.
You just kind of have to build up a concept.
Yeah.
With other words.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like you have to change the way that you think in order to have a conversation with somebody.
Yeah,
it's a little bit different. Like I imagine that Chinese is the same way, or it's like with the Latin languages, it's kind of you change like the way that the sentence structure is, but for the most part, like it's kind of the same. Like you're able to confer the same concepts to somebody.
Yeah.
But like with like Russian, like that's not how this works.
And isn't it interesting too when you start seeing the way that they construct their language, you can kind of start understanding the way they think.
Exactly.
Because I kind of had a moment like that where, when I was learning Chinese and it was like the way that they do numbers. So, the way our alphabet works is you have you have 26 letters that make sounds, and when you put them all together, they make certain sounds. But when you look at a Chinese character, there's no indication of what that sounds like.
Yeah.
You can't glean context from that. You just kind of have to know like what that is. But when they build their numbers, it's like if you want to say 11, it's 10 plus 1. So just counting and saying a number is doing math.
Exactly.
So you kind of start to see why they have a proficiency in math, because doing something as simple as saying a number requires arithmetic. Whereas you have a concept here, in English we have a concept of 10.
You just roll it over.
It's 10.
Yeah.
That's just 10. You wouldn't say, and you say 11. 11 is just 11.
No.
In order to say 11, you don't say 10 plus 1 or 10 times 3.
No.
You just say 10 times 3 is just 30.
Yeah.
Like, we just have a word for that.
So that's already kind of built into the language structure.
That's already built into the language structure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. It's, I might be wrong about it, but I'm pretty sure, like, so there's characters for 1 through 10, and then you have 0.
Mm-hmm.
But some words, like for 2, is said 2 different ways.
Really?
They have a character and a word for the value of 2, and they have a character and a word for the concept of 2, like a pair.
Yeah.
It's very weird.
And
they have a character and a word for 0, but they also have a character and a word for the concept of 0, nothingness.
Well, nothingness and 0 aren't necessarily the same thing.
When you think about 0 as a mathematical value,
yeah,
it is different than the idea of nothing.
Well, it's the same thing with like you did some computer science stuff. Like 0 and null are not the same thing.
Yeah.
Null is a blank value. It represents nothing, right? Whereas like 0 is still a value. It just represents the absence of something.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a really weird way to think about it.
It's a very abstract way of thinking about what that value is.
And the thing about Chinese is, like, it's such a tonal language. Like, I would go to the Chinese restaurant that we like, and it's the only Chinese speaking person I had in my life, so that was who I would speak Chinese to. And it was like, I know I'm saying this correctly, but there's all these, like, in voice inflections and everything, and if you don't do it perfectly, it doesn't sound like anything to them.
Yeah. They're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. It's like, if you want to say goodbye, it's zaijian.
Yeah.
But if you say zaijian and it's zaijian, that's how you say goodbye. But if you say zaijian and like an American accent, that doesn't sound like anything.
Yeah.
You're like, what the fuck does that?
Yeah.
What did you say? That's just nonsense to me.
Just speaking gibberish.
Yeah, but you put a little bit of accent on it, and all of a sudden it comes through clearly.
Yeah.
Like, I try to say, how are you today? It's Ni Jian Tian Shima. And I said that to her, and she was like, huh? And I was like, Ni Jian Tian Shima. But I wasn't saying it with the right accent.
Yeah.
She was like, no. Ni Jian Tian Shima. And I was like, that's what I said.
Yeah, that's exactly what the fuck I said.
That's what I said, damn it. So it's weird when you have a language like that, and then Spanish, on the other hand, is just like, if you say the word, they understand.
Yeah, you can butcher it pretty good.
You can butcher it pretty good. They'll still get what you're saying. It's kind of funny too. When I first started learning Spanish, and not in school, but like in the capacity of using it, like speaking to people, it's like I picked up most of mine working at the restaurant because the cooks spoke Spanish, and it was important to speak to them because they're cooking the food that I give to the people who give me money. So it was important. And one of the things they told me was, when you speak Spanish, speak it with an accent.
Yeah.
Like, speak it with a Spanish accent or a Mexican accent. And I was like, that seems rude.
Yeah.
And like, that seems racist to do that. They're like, no, think about it. That's what we're used to hearing.
Yeah.
So if you speak it that way, it's easier for us to understand what it is that you're saying.
Yeah. I guess it would be, it would make sense. Like if somebody came from like Germany or something like that, and like they were trying to speak English with like a German accent,
it'd be harder for you to understand.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas like if I knew like they could speak it with like a regular like English, like proper English accent, I'd be like, oh, I understand what you're saying.
Right. Yeah. You wouldn't be like, oh, you're being racist towards me. You're being.
And isn't that interesting too? That it's like just trying to communicate with somebody like with an accent that they understand, that like we automatically assume that would be a racist thing to do.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, when really all I'm trying to do is communicate with you.
Yeah, well, because it would be racist if you went up to a Chinese person, you went ching chong ping pong.
Yeah.
That's racist.
That's super fucking racist. Like, you can't do that.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting that it kind of has, like, leaked over into, like, you, like, trying to make, like, an actual attempt to, like, try to communicate with this person.
Yeah, that was even now it's a hurdle. It's like if I see somebody who's speaks Spanish, I still feel like it's rude for me to just go up and start speaking Spanish to that person.
No.
And it almost kind of seems like pretentious in a way.
Yeah.
So even now, sometimes unless I'm like very familiar with the person, like at the Mexican restaurant, I know a lot of those people, I'll speak Spanish to them, but they'll speak Spanish to me.
Yeah.
So I guess it's more familiar. But like going up to just a random person on the street and just start speaking Spanish to them, like, what if they don't speak Spanish? What if they speak like Portuguese?
Yeah. Well, I mean, also too, it's an interesting thing to take into consideration because a lot of people get really upset when they're like, oh, well, English shouldn't be the language of America. It's like, well, if we're saying that, then when I see somebody that looks like they might be Hispanic, like, should I speak to them in Spanish?
Do I just make an assumption?
Do I just make an assumption? Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. And that's the thing with Chinese, too, is like you can't just assume everybody speaks Mandarin because you have Cantonese, Fujianese.
Yeah. Or that might be like a third-generation Chinese person. They're like, what are you talking about?
I don't know if I don't speak Chinese. What the hell? And it's like, if you put a Chinese person next to a Korean person, I'm sorry, but I
can't tell the difference.
I can't tell the difference.
Nope.
This is the same exact thing if you put me next to a person from California. Can you tell that I'm from Georgia and they're from California?
Nope.
Maybe by what we're wearing, but
no,
you can't tell. So it would be if we spoke different languages, it would be presumptuous to go up to one of us and
exactly. It'd be like
language.
putting me next to somebody that's like from
Russia.
Russia.
Yeah, you can't tell the difference.
Yeah, it'd be like, what? I don't.
Yeah. And Fujianese and Chinese they sound the same as well. Cantonese and Chinese sound the same. It's kind of funny because when I started learning Chinese, I was like, I'm going to go watch Ip Man and see how much of that I'm picking up on. And I wasn't picking up on anything.
You're like, what the fuck are they talking about?
Yeah, they're speaking Cantonese. It's a different language. Like some languages are similar. Like, Mary and I are planning on going to Italy at the end of the year. And I was like, okay, well, I know that Italy and Spanish share a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
I was like, I should be able to pick up on some of it, at least contextually. Nope. It's way different. If you take an Italian, if an Italian person speaks Italian to a Spanish-speaking person, they're not going to understand each other.
No, yeah, there's a few
languages.
things that sort of like transfer over. It's the same way with like English. It's like computadora. Like that's computer.
Yeah, clearly that's computer.
Obviously that's computer. I can tell from just you saying that that you're talking about a computer.
Yeah. It's like in English, hospital.
Yeah.
In Spanish, hospital.
Yeah. It's
In Italy, hospital.
Yeah.
In German, Krankenhaus.
Krankenhaus.
Yeah. Ambulance is Krankenwagen.
Like, I don't want to get in it.
How did that language happen when right next door is France? And they speak French.
Yeah, and then Italy's like right there.
Italy's right there, and we're all speaking different things. We're like right here next to each other.
Europe's a weird place.
It is.
Europe is a weird place because you got to take into consideration it's like you have like Germany that's here, and you have like Spain that's right here. Greek's is totally different thing over here.
Yeah.
And you have the UK that's up here, and then up in here you have like the Vikings.
Yeah.
It's like you have like this mishmash.
And all the Vikings speak Swedish and Finnish and Norwegian, and all that's different.
Yeah.
So,
and then you have
no
like
wonder they're all killing each other.
Yeah.
Nobody understood who the
And then you have like Poland over here.
Yeah, I've always really liked learning about like languages and like where they come from and stuff like that because it's language is like the best window into a society and a culture, like the way they think about things and why they do the things that they do.
Yeah, it's like we were saying. It's like you have like certain languages like they don't. It's like we don't have a word for that. That word doesn't exist in our language, and it's when you say like that word doesn't exist in our language. It's like well then you don't have any way of conveying whatever that emotion might be, or like whatever it is that you're trying to get across. So it's sort of like have you ever read 1984 by George Orwell? So in that book, not to say I'm not trying to make a parallel between language and in this book or like languages in this book, but in that book, like he makes a pretty good point. They have like a I think it's called like double speak or whatever, where it's like you say something but you really mean another thing.
Yeah.
And there's not a way for you to convey like a particular emotion that you're feeling.
Yeah.
So it's like when you take that that vocabulary away, it's like now you're controlling the language and now you're controlling speech.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because now it adjusts
how you think.
it changes the way that you think and your thought process.
If you take away, you can take away a concept by taking away the ability to convey that concept.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I know that German in particular has a lot of words for concepts, very specific concepts.
Yeah.
It's like they have a word, and I don't remember what it is, some big, long, complicated word, specifically for when you put a sauce on a piece of meat.
Really?
Yeah. We would just say, you put sauce on meat.
No.
They have a word for that.
No.
It's the same thing with Chinese. If you want to say 30, you would say, I think it's sanshi, which is 3 times 10.
Yeah.
We would just say 30.
30.
We have a word for 30. You don't have to explain 30.
Yeah.
You just say 30.
10 3 times.
Yeah. Can I just say, yeah, it's like if you went to a Mexican restaurant, they have a lot of like combinations and stuff. You wouldn't say, I want the number 4 times 10.
Yeah.
Like, you want the number 4 10 times?
Yeah, exactly. Like there would be a miscommunication on what it is exactly that you'd like to have. Yeah.
But all you're trying to say is 40.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it also comes across too, like if you look at like Chinese restaurant like menus and stuff, sometimes it's like you'll see like it's like that doesn't translate well.
Yeah.
It's like when I'm sure like if you have someone that's actually doing the translating for it, it's like if you knew exactly how to read it and then you also understood English very well, you'd be like, that doesn't translate well. Like I'm gonna have to change this structure a little bit
in order to get the same concept across.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's like when you Google translate like a sentence in Chinese, it comes across like half English. You're like, what the fuck? Like, most because some of those words don't have an English counterpart.
Exactly.
Some of those words in Chinese need 10 other words in order to get the same point across.
And that's a really hard concept to understand when you're learning something that isn't a Latin-based language.
Yeah.
Where it's like, because if you're learning a Latin-based language, you're starting from this idea of like the sentence structure is sort of the same.
Yeah.
You can still kind of get across like the same concepts and everything. Whereas like if you're learning like a language that isn't Latin-based, it's like then the concept is totally different.
Yeah. Yeah, because when you're learning a language, especially at first, it's like you are really, the first thing that happens is you think about what it is you want to say, you translate it, and then you say it. And you're not speaking the way that you speak. You're just translating what you're saying. So, it's like when you speak Spanish, when you ask somebody how's your day? Or like, how are you? It's ¿cómo estás? And I'm not saying, okay, ¿cómo is how, estás is you, and then I say that. I just know that very naturally because I've said it so many times. Whereas in Chinese, I have to think about, okay, well, how does that go again? And then you say it, and then of course, because my Chinese sucks, I can't say it correctly, and it doesn't mean anything. So once you get a point where you're just speaking it, you just know that's what you want to convey, and you do it. You can get more of who you are comes through when you're speaking.
Yeah.
It's like, if I want to say what's your phone number, and in Spanish, like, see, even right now, I'm drawing a blank. I think it's ¿cuál es tu número? Something like that.
That sounds
Como,
right.
Or something like that. But in Chinese, it's 你的电话号码是多少? Which literally translated is 你的 is your, 电话号码 is telephone number, and 多少 is like what's the value.
Yeah.
So what you're saying, literally translated, is your telephone number, what value?
Yeah.
But to them, it's what's your phone number.
Yeah.
So like we said before, the concepts are very different in how you.
Correct. And if you cut off portions of that in order to make it sound more like an English structured sentence, they wouldn't understand what the fuck you're talking about.
It doesn't make any sense.
Because the concepts and the ideas don't translate well.
Yeah. That's why language is, like I said, I think language is the best window into how a culture thinks and how they kind of came to be and why they are the way they are. So, but yeah, I think it's interesting. Well, that's all we've got time for today. thanks again, everybody, for listening. We hope that I almost said I hope you appreciate it. I really hope you appreciate what we're doing for you. I hope that you enjoyed. As always, if you guys have any questions or concerns or anything you want us to talk about, feel free to shoot us a message on the Facebook page, send an email to thickboypodcast@gmail.com. Once again, we have plenty of stickers left over. So if you're wanting stickers, send us a message with your address, an email with your address. We're not going to show up at your house and hand deliver them like a freak, but we will mail them to you. So, you have anything you want to close with?
No, I was just pretty surprised that we didn't get any hate on the Roe v. Wade discussion.
Well, whenever we dive into something like that, I try to be as diplomatic as possible and still get my point across.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's very.
Even after we did that episode, I was like, whew. It was like tiptoeing on landmines.
Walking on eggshells. But yeah. Well, thanks again, everybody. There's something I want to say. Oh yeah, I am putting together a compilation of a best of compilation, just like our favorite moments from the past couple episodes. It was supposed to be to celebrate 25 episodes, but as is per usual, I'm late with getting that out.
We're behind on things.
We're behind on schedule. So even this morning, I was late getting up so we could actually record.
Well, there you go.
So, but yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you and goodbye.
Bye, everybody.